He signed the house over to his mistress for $1 while his family clapped. His wife didn't fight back. She just watched. "She's too weak," they whispered, until the real estate conference revealed her face on the screen. Owner of $900 million in property. His world collapsed instantly. The dining room was filled with laughter that night, the kind of laughter that cuts through the air like broken glass. Marcus Harper stood at the head of the table, champagne in hand, looking like a man who'd just won the lottery. His family surrounded him, his mother Loretta, his sister Candace, his brother Jerome, all of them dressed up like they were at somebody's wedding. But this wasn't a celebration of love. This was something else entirely. This was a funeral for a marriage, and they were dancing on the grave. Diana Harper sat at the far corner of the table, quiet as always, her hands folded gently in her lap. She'd spent 3 hours cooking that meal, roasted chicken with herbs, macaroni and cheese made from scratch, collard greens simmering slow the way Marcus's mother taught her, cornbread still warm from the oven. The table was beautiful, the food was perfect, but nobody thanked her. They never did. Marcus cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. He had that look in his eyes, that cruel satisfaction that comes when a man thinks he's finally won. "I want to make an announcement," he said, his voice booming through the room. "I'm finally moving forward with my life. I'm transferring this house to someone who actually appreciates me." Rochelle Davis sat beside him, smiling like a cat who'd caught a canary. She was younger than Diana by 4 years, always dressed in designer everything, her nails always perfect, her hair always laid. She worked with Marcus at the real estate firm, and somewhere between showing houses and closing deals, she'd decided to close in on Diana's husband too. Marcus pulled out a stack of papers from his briefcase. "For $1, he announced, sliding the deed across the table to Rochelle. "This house is now yours." The room erupted. Loretta jumped up and hugged Rochelle like she was the daughter she'd always wanted. "Finally, baby, finally," she said, tears of joy in her eyes. "My son is free from that dead weight." Candace raised her glass, laughing loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Diana never deserved this house anyway. She never deserved anything Marcus gave her. Jerome stood up, grinning wide. "To new beginnings," he toasted. "To my brother finally getting the life he deserves." Diana sat there, still as stone, her eyes distant like she was somewhere far away. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't beg. She just watched them celebrate like she was watching a movie about somebody else's life. "Why isn't she fighting?" Rochelle whispered to Marcus, loud enough for everyone to hear. Marcus shrugged, that cruel smile never leaving his face. "Because she knows she has nothing, no family, no money, no power. She's got nowhere to go. She's been living off me for 6 years, and she knows it." Diana stood up slowly, her movements graceful and deliberate. "Excuse me," she said softly. Her voice was so quiet they almost didn't hear her. She walked toward the guest bedroom, her footsteps making no sound on the hardwood floor. Behind her, the celebration continued like she'd never been there at all. But what Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that his wife's silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. And in exactly 14 days, his entire world would crumble. 20 years earlier, in a small house on the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, a young girl named Diana lived with her grandmother, Ruth. The house was modest, paint peeling in places, but it was clean and filled with love. Diana's parents had died in a car accident when she was 5 years old, and her grandmother had raised her from that day forward. Ruth was a woman of quiet strength, the kind of woman who'd worked her whole life as a housekeeper for wealthy families and never complained once. Her hands were weathered from years of scrubbing floors and washing dishes, but her eyes were sharp and kind. She'd seen the world, seen how people with money moved, seen how power worked in the shadows. One evening when Diana was 12 years old, Ruth sat her down at the kitchen table. "Baby girl," she said, holding Diana's small hands in her own, "let me tell you something important. In this world, people will judge you by what they see. They'll think because you're quiet, you're weak. They'll think because you're humble, you got nothing. But don't ever let them see all your cards. A quiet woman is underestimated, and an underestimated woman is the most dangerous kind." Ruth reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver locket. Inside were two pictures, one of Ruth when she was young and one of Diana as a baby. "Wear this always," Ruth said, fastening it around Diana's neck. "Remember where you come from. Remember who loves you, and remember that real power don't need to announce itself." Diana wore that locket every day after that. Through high school, where she worked part-time jobs and studied late into the night. Through college, where she earned a scholarship and majored in finance and real estate investment. She was always quiet, always focused, always watching and learning. People underestimated her, and that was exactly how she wanted it. Ruth passed away the year Diana graduated college, leaving her 19 properties scattered across Georgia. Buildings Ruth had bought quietly over 40 years of saving every dollar she earned. "These are yours now," Ruth's lawyer told Diana. "Your grandmother was a very smart woman. She built something real." Diana took those 19 properties and studied them like they were sacred texts. She learned everything about real estate investment, about property management, about building wealth in silence. Within 5 years, she'd turned 19 buildings into 37. Within 8 years, she had 52. She operated through LLCs and holding companies, keeping her name out of public records. She wanted to build something powerful, but she didn't need anyone to know it was hers. And then she met Marcus. 6 years ago, Diana was 26 years old, working as a junior analyst at a real estate firm. Marcus was 29, a charming agent with a smooth smile and words that felt like honey. He brought her flowers on their second date, told her she was different from other women. "You're real," he said. "You're humble. You don't need all that flashy stuff. That's what I love about you." Diana fell for him hard. He made her feel seen, made her feel special. When he proposed after 8 months, she said yes without hesitation. They got married in a small ceremony, just family and a few friends. Diana wore her grandmother's locket that day, felt like Ruth was there with her, watching her start a new chapter. But Diana never told Marcus about the properties, never told him about the growing empire she was building. She wanted him to love her for her, not for what she had. She wanted to know that the man who promised forever meant it, meant her, not her money. So she kept working quietly, kept building her portfolio, kept growing her wealth while cooking his dinners and being the humble wife he thought he wanted. She thought love was enough. She thought if she was patient and kind and supportive, Marcus would eventually see her value. She was wrong. The days after Marcus signed the house over to Rochelle were brutal. Loretta showed up on the second day with boxes and trash bags, her face twisted in disgust. "Start packing your little things," she told Diana. "Rochelle's moving in next week and we need this place ready. You've been a burden long enough." Diana was in the kitchen making tea. She turned slowly, looked at Loretta with those calm eyes. "I'll be out soon," she said quietly. "You better be," Loretta snapped. "My son wasted 6 years on you. 6 years he could have spent with a real woman. You should be ashamed of yourself, holding on to a man who don't want you." Diana didn't respond, just picked up her tea and walked to the guest bedroom, closing the door softly behind her. On day 3, Candace posted on social media, "Some women hold on to men who don't want them. Embarrassing, pathetic. Move on, sis." She tagged Marcus and Rochelle in the post. The likes came rolling in. People Diana thought were her friends commented laughing emojis. It was public humiliation designed to break her. Diana saw the post, didn't comment, didn't react, just kept going to work every morning in her business casual clothes, her leather briefcase in hand, looking like any other professional woman heading to the office. Nobody in Marcus's family ever asked where she worked. They assumed it was some low-level administrative job, something beneath them. They never imagined the truth. Jerome showed up on day 5 with a moving truck. "Marcus is being generous, letting you take your stuff," he said, leaning against the doorframe like he owned the place. "Don't push your luck." "I won't," Diana said softly. "Thank you." Jerome laughed. "You're really something, you know that? Just taking this like it's nothing. Where's your pride, woman?" Diana looked at him, her hand touching the locket at her throat. "Pride isn't loud, Jerome. You'll learn that eventually." He walked away, shaking his head, calling her crazy under his breath. By day 7, Rochelle was walking through the house with an interior designer discussing paint colors and furniture. Diana was still living there, still sleeping in the guest room, still cooking her simple meals in the kitchen. Rochelle acted like Diana was invisible, talking about her like she was a ghost that needed to be exorcised. "I want her energy completely erased from these walls," Rochelle told the designer. "Everything she touched, I want it gone. I want this house to feel brand new." The designer nodded, taking notes. Diana walked past them carrying a cup of coffee, her face serene. Rochelle watched her go, confused. "Why isn't she angry?" she whispered to the designer. "If someone took my man and my house, I'd be tearing this place apart." The designer shrugged. "Some people just give up, I guess." But Diana hadn't given up. She was waiting. She was preparing. She was about to show them exactly who they'd been underestimating. On day 10, Marcus cornered Diana in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, her movements slow and methodical. "Why are you still here?" he demanded. "Don't you have any self-respect?" Diana turned off the water, dried her hands on a towel. "I'm leaving soon, Marcus. I just need a few more days." "For what?" Marcus laughed, cruel and sharp. "You don't have anywhere to go, no friends. Your grandmother's dead. You're alone. You got nothing." Diana's hand moved to her locket, her fingers tracing the silver surface. "I'll be fine." Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a vicious whisper. "You know what your problem is? You're too quiet, too weak. A real woman would have fought for her marriage, would have made herself valuable. But you just exist. You're like a ghost in this house. That's why I needed Rochelle. She's alive. She's passionate. She makes me feel like a man. You're just nothing." Diana's eyes filled with tears for the first time since this nightmare began, but she didn't let them fall. "I hope she makes you happy, Marcus," she whispered. "I really do." Marcus walked away laughing, leaving Diana alone in the kitchen. That night, Diana sat in the guest bedroom with her laptop open. The screen glowed in the darkness, illuminating spreadsheets and property records and bank statements. She looked at the numbers. $900 million in assets, 73 commercial properties, 18 residential complexes, 4 shopping centers, an empire built in silence. She made 3 phone calls. The first was to her lawyer, a sharp woman named Denise, who'd helped Diana structure her holdings. "It's time," Diana said simply. "You sure?" Denise asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back." "I'm sure." The second call was to her business manager, a man named Anthony who'd been managing her portfolio for 3 years. "Prepare the presentation for the Southeast Real Estate Conference," Diana said. "I want everything ready, every detail." "We'll have it perfect," Anthony promised. The third call was to her accountant. "Release the acquisition files," Diana instructed. "Let them become public record. I'm done hiding." When the calls were finished, Diana touched her grandmother's locket. "I tried to love him without conditions, Grandma," she whispered into the darkness. I tried to be humble and patient like you taught me, but you were right. People show you who they are, eventually, and now it's time they see who I am." What Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Diana's quiet morning departures weren't to some low-level job. She was managing a real estate empire that stretched across 3 states. Some of the properties Marcus had sold as an agent over the years belonged to her. She'd hired him through shell companies wanting to support his career, wanting to see him succeed. She'd been lifting him up while he tore her down. She'd been building their future while he was planning his escape, but not anymore. The quiet woman was about to speak, and when she did, the world would listen. 2 weeks after Marcus signed the house deed, the Southeast Real Estate Investment Conference opened its doors at the downtown convention center. Over 3,000 real estate professionals packed the building: investors, developers, agents, brokers, all the major players in the industry. The energy was electric, people networking and making deals, the air thick with ambition and money. Marcus arrived with Rochelle on his arm, both of them dressed like they were attending the Oscars. Marcus wore a custom suit, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. Rochelle wore a red dress that cost more than most people's rent. They walked through the convention center like royalty, Marcus introducing Rochelle to his colleagues, bragging about his recent success. His whole family was there too. Loretta wore her church hat and her best dress, looking proud as a peacock. Candace and Jerome followed behind, all of them acting like they'd made it, like they were part of the elite now that Marcus had upgraded his life. "This is where the real players come," Marcus told Rochelle, his chest puffed out. "Millionaires, moguls, this is my world. I've been working toward this my whole career." They found their seats in the main conference hall, right in the center where everyone could see them. Marcus wanted to be visible. He wanted people to see him with his new woman, his new life, his new status. He felt untouchable. The lights dimmed. The conference host, a distinguished older man in a gray suit, took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We have a very special keynote speaker today." The crowd settled into their seats, curious. This person has been operating in the shadows of our industry for over a decade. A mystery investor who's been quietly acquiring premium properties across Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina, with a portfolio valued at over $900 million. Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. This was the kind of player he wanted to meet, the kind of person who could take his career to the next level. "This individual has chosen today to step into the light," the host continued, "to reveal themselves to our community. So without further delay, please welcome the owner of Harper Holdings Group, Diana Harper." The massive screen behind the stage lit up with Diana's professional headshot. Her face, 30 feet tall, looking directly into the camera with calm confidence. The convention hall erupted in gasps, but nobody gasped louder than Marcus. His champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor, the sound lost in the noise of 3,000 people reacting at once. His face went pale, his mouth hanging open like he'd forgotten how to breathe. Beside him, Rochelle's confident smile melted into pure shock. That's your wife?" Rochelle whispered, her voice shaking. Loretta grabbed Marcus's arm so hard her nails dug into his skin. "Baby, that can't be the same Diana. That can't be." But then Diana walked onto the stage, and there was no denying it. She wore a tailored navy power suit that fit her like it was made by angels. Her hair was styled in elegant waves, framing her face perfectly. She wore professional heels that made her stand tall and powerful, and around her neck, just visible above her collar, was her grandmother's silver locket, the only piece of her old life she carried with her. Diana walked to the center of the stage, her posture straight, her head held high. She looked out at the audience, her eyes scanning the crowd, until they landed on Marcus. She didn't smile, didn't frown, just looked at him with the calm certainty of someone who'd been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "Good afternoon," Diana said, her voice clear and strong, amplified through the speakers so everyone could hear. "Many of you don't know me. I've preferred it that way. For the past decade, I've operated through LLCs and holding companies, keeping my name out of public records. But today, I'm stepping forward because silence has served its purpose." She clicked a small remote in her hand, and the screen behind her changed. A map appeared, showing properties spread across 3 states, each one marked with a red pin. Dozens of them, hundreds of them. "I own 73 commercial buildings," Diana continued, her voice steady as a heartbeat. 18 residential complexes, 4 shopping centers, and 1 very special property I'd like to discuss today. She clicked the remote again. The screen showed a house, Marcus's house, the house he'd sold to Rochelle for $1. The convention hall went silent. You could hear a pin drop. "This property at 4267 Riverside Drive," Diana said, her voice carrying through the absolute stillness. "Some of you may recognize it. It was illegally sold 2 weeks ago by Marcus Harper to Rochelle Davis for $1. 3,000 pairs of eyes turned to look at Marcus. He wanted to disappear, wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. Rochelle had already started edging away from him, trying to put distance between them. "What Mr. Harper didn't know," Diana continued, her tone almost conversational now, like she was discussing the weather, "is that I purchased this property 8 years ago under my maiden name before we were married. The deed was always in my name. It was never his to sell. The transaction he signed was worthless, void, meaningless." Rochelle stood up, her face red with humiliation and rage. "You said you owned that house," she hissed at Marcus. "You made me look like a fool." She grabbed her purse and pushed past people in the row, practically running for the exit. The red dress that had made her look so confident now made her look like a target as she fled. Diana watched her go, then continued like nothing had happened. "But here's what makes this situation truly interesting." She clicked to the next slide. "The real estate firm where Mr. Harper works, Harper and Associates Real Estate." Another click. Documents appeared on screen. Acquisition papers, transfer of ownership documents. "I purchased that company 3 days ago through one of my holding corporations. Mr. Harper is now, as of this morning, unemployed." Marcus made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. His mother clutched his arm, her proud smile completely gone, replaced by horror. Jerome stood up from his seat, his face twisted in anger. "This is slander," he shouted. "You can't just—" "I can," Diana interrupted him calmly, her eyes finding him in the crowd. "And Jerome, since we're discussing property ownership, I should mention that the building where your restaurant operates, Jerome's Kitchen on Peachtree Street, that's one of my buildings. Your lease expires in 30 days. I've decided not to renew it. The space has already been leased to another tenant." Jerome sat down hard, like his legs had given out. Diana's gaze shifted to Candace, who'd been trying to make herself invisible, slouching down in her seat. "And Candace, your boutique, Candace's Closet on 5th Street, that's my property as well. I've found a new tenant for that space too, one who actually pays rent on time." Candace looked like she might be sick. Her face had gone green, her hands shaking as she covered her mouth. Diana turned back to face Marcus directly. The entire convention center was silent, everyone holding their breath, watching this woman dismantle a man's entire life with nothing but the truth. "You told me I was nothing, Marcus," Diana said, her voice soft but clear, reaching every corner of that massive room. "You said I had no power, no family, nowhere to go. You said I'd been living off you, taking advantage of your generosity." She paused, letting those words hang in the air. You were wrong on every single count. She clicked to a final slide. A photo of her grandmother Ruth appeared on screen, that wise, weathered face that Diana had loved so much. My grandmother Ruth taught me that quiet doesn't mean weak. She cleaned houses for 40 years and bought property with every dollar she saved. When she died, she left me 19 buildings. I turned those 19 buildings into 73. I built an empire while being your wife, while cooking your meals, while listening to your mother call me dead weight, while watching your sister mock me on social media, while hearing you call me nothing. Marcus's face was wet with tears now. Grown man crying in front of 3,000 people, his whole world collapsing around him. His mother was crying too. His siblings looked destroyed. I never needed you, Marcus, Diana said, and her voice was gentle now, almost kind. I chose you. I loved you. I wanted to build a life with you where love mattered more than money. But you taught me something valuable. You taught me that love given to the wrong person is just wasted energy. She closed her presentation, the screen going dark behind her. Thank you for your time. The audience erupted. Standing ovation. 3,000 people on their feet, applauding this woman who just delivered the most devastating keynote speech in conference history. People were cheering, whistling, some of them openly crying at the raw power of what they'd just witnessed. Diana walked off the stage, head high, her grandmother's locket catching the light. She didn't look back at Marcus, didn't need to. She'd said everything that needed to be said. Marcus sat in his seat, destroyed. His family around him looked like they'd been hit by a tornado. And somewhere in the back of his mind, through all the shock and devastation, one thought kept repeating, how did I not see this? How did I not know? The answer was simple. He'd been so convinced his wife was nothing that he never bothered to really look at her. He'd been so focused on what he wanted her to be that he never saw who she actually was. And now he was paying the price. The weeks after the conference were brutal for Marcus. He tried calling Diana. Every number he had for her was disconnected or blocked. He went to the house, but the locks had been changed, and there was security posted who wouldn't let him pass the gate. He sent emails, sent letters. All of them went unanswered. Rochelle had blocked him on everything. Her social media showed her at fancy restaurants with other men, living her best life, acting like Marcus had never existed. When he tried to approach her at an industry event, she looked at him with such disgust it made him physically recoil. You embarrassed me, she said coldly. You made me look like a gold digger who tried to steal a house that wasn't even yours. Don't ever speak to me again. His phone was a graveyard of bad news. First came the email from his job. Well, his former job. Diana now owned the company, and the new management had decided to restructure. Marcus was let go effective immediately. Then came the eviction notice from his apartment. Turns out Diana owned that building too, and his lease was not being renewed. His car got repossessed when the bank called in the loan early. That bank, part of Diana's financial portfolio. Within 3 months, Marcus had lost everything. Jerome's restaurant closed its doors 30 days after the conference, exactly like Diana promised. He couldn't find another location he could afford. The restaurant that had been his pride and joy, his dream, was gone. He moved back in with his mother, sleeping in his childhood bedroom at 40 years old, bitter and broken. Candace's boutique suffered the same fate. She tried to move her inventory to another location, but the damage to her reputation was already done. The viral video of Diana's speech had made her a joke online. People called her the sister who mocked a billionaire. Her business failed within 2 months. She had to file for bankruptcy, move back home with Loretta too. 2 grown adults living with their mother, all because they'd underestimated the wrong woman. Loretta had to sell her condo. She'd been so proud of that place, but she couldn't afford the mortgage anymore without Jerome's help. Ironically, Diana had quietly purchased the condo through a proxy company and offered to let Loretta stay at a reduced rent. But Loretta was too proud, too ashamed. She sold to someone else for less money and moved into a small apartment across town. The family that had celebrated Marcus's cruelty now lived with the consequences. They barely spoke to each other anymore. Too much blame to go around, too much shame. Marcus's fall was the hardest. He went from being a successful real estate agent to working at a car rental counter, helping tourists with their reservations. Wearing a polyester uniform with his name tag crooked, he moved into a one-bedroom apartment in a rough neighborhood, the kind of place he used to drive through and feel superior about. His car was a beat-up Honda that made weird noises when he accelerated. His clothes came from discount stores. His life had become everything he'd feared. One day, about 6 months after the conference, Marcus was at a nice restaurant downtown, picking up a takeout order because he couldn't afford to eat there anymore. He saw Rochelle through the window, sitting at a table with a man in an expensive suit. She was laughing, touching the man's hand across the table, looking radiant. The man stood up to go to the restroom, and for one moment, Rochelle looked toward the window. Her eyes met Marcus's. She stared at him for 3 long seconds, her face completely blank, like she was looking at a stranger. Then she looked away, picked up her wine glass, and took a sip like he'd never existed at all. Marcus picked up his takeout bag and walked to his car, feeling smaller than he'd ever felt in his life. He'd lost everything: his career, his money, his family's respect, his pride. And the woman he'd thrown away his marriage for wouldn't even acknowledge his existence. He was alone, exactly what he'd said Diana would be. 1 year after the conference, Diana stood in front of a beautiful new building in the neighborhood where her grandmother used to live. The sign above the door read, "Ruth's House, a community center for women in transition." A small crowd had gathered for the opening ceremony. Local residents, community leaders, women who would benefit from the center's services. Diana wore a simple but elegant dress, her grandmother's locket visible at her throat. She looked peaceful, happy, free. "Thank you all for being here," Diana said, addressing the crowd. "This center is named for my grandmother, Ruth Harper, who taught me that real power isn't about revenge or proving people wrong. It's about building something that lasts, something that helps people, something that matters." She gestured to the building behind her. "Ruth's house will provide resources for women leaving difficult situations, women who need job training, women who need a place to start over, women who need to remember they're stronger than they know. My grandmother built wealth from nothing, and she taught me to do the same. Now I want to help other women build their own strength." The crowd applauded. Diana smiled, touching her locket gently. She could feel her grandmother's presence, could almost hear Ruth's voice saying, "That's my baby girl. I'm so proud of you." Diana's life had transformed completely over that year. She ran her empire openly now, no more hiding behind shell companies. She sat on boards of major corporations. She mentored young women in business, teaching them about real estate investment and building wealth. She dated occasionally, but carefully. She'd learned her lesson about giving her heart away too easily. One afternoon, Diana drove past the house she used to share with Marcus. She'd converted it into affordable housing for single mothers, 6 apartments where women could raise their children in a safe, beautiful neighborhood. She'd kept the kitchen exactly as it was, the kitchen where she'd cooked so many meals that nobody appreciated. Now other women cooked there, making memories with their babies, building their own stories. Diana didn't think about Marcus much anymore. He was a chapter in her story, a lesson she'd learned. Sometimes painful lessons are the most valuable ones. He'd taught her that she didn't need anyone's validation. She'd learned to value herself, to protect her peace, to understand that people show you who they are and you should believe them. She pulled her car over for a moment, sat there looking at the house. Then she pulled out her phone and looked at a photo of her grandmother, taken years ago in front of that same small house where Diana grew up. Ruth was smiling in the picture, her hands on her hips, looking proud and strong. "I hope I made you proud, Grandma," Diana whispered, and somewhere, somehow, she knew Ruth was smiling, because Diana's story wasn't about revenge. It was about knowing your worth. It was about building in silence while others laughed. It was about understanding that the people who underestimate you are actually giving you the greatest advantage of all. They never see you coming, and by the time they realize who you really are, it's already too late. Diana started her car and drove away, leaving that house and those memories behind. She had a business meeting in an hour, a mentoring session after that, and a quiet dinner by herself later that evening. Her life was full, her heart was healing, her future was bright. She touched her grandmother's locket one more time, feeling its weight against her chest. That little piece of silver had seen everything, the humble beginnings, the betrayal, the transformation, the triumph. It was a reminder of where she came from and how far she'd traveled. And as Diana merged into traffic, heading toward whatever came next, she understood something her grandmother had tried to teach her all those years ago. You don't need to make noise to be powerful. You don't need to explain yourself to people who've already decided who you are. You just need to know your own worth and build your life accordingly. The rest takes care of itself. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most powerful. Sometimes the person they mock is the one who owns everything. Diana never needed to prove herself to Marcus. She just needed to let him prove who he really was. If this story touched you, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me, would you have revealed the truth sooner, or would you have stayed silent like Diana? I'll see you in the next one. Never confuse silence with weakness. Never mistake humility for powerlessness. And never underestimate a woman who stays quiet because she's not afraid. She's just choosing when to speak. And when she finally does, the world will listen.